Days after President Trump departed Beijing, leaders Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin declared their relationship to be the best friendship in history. But this rhetoric masks a much more urgent reality than simple camaraderie suggests. The true stakes here involve whether we are looking at a unified offensive bloc or two desperate regimes performing mutual survival tactics. By understanding the specific asymmetries driving this partnership, you will see why Western policymakers consistently misread their threat level and how to distinguish between genuine ideological alignment and temporary tactical convenience. To understand what is happening in Beijing and Moscow right now, we must first discard the framework of permanent friends or enemies that has dominated foreign policy analysis for decades. This binary thinking fails when applied to a relationship defined by necessity rather than shared values. The declaration of best friendship immediately following high-level Western diplomatic visits functions less as an invitation to cooperation and more as a defensive synchronization protocol. It mirrors how distributed computing systems implement failover mechanisms when primary nodes become unstable. When the United States applies pressure, both Beijing and Moscow signal that their connection remains active, ensuring availability even if the underlying infrastructure is strained. The intensity of this rhetoric correlates inversely with the stability of U.S.-China trade relations. As external threats increase from Washington, diplomatic signaling in East Asia calibrates upward to offset those pressures. This creates a pressure valve dynamic where statements are not meant to signal a unified long-term strategic bloc, but rather serve as immediate counterweights to isolation attempts. The leaders know that without this public display of unity, their respective domestic and international positions would weaken significantly under current sanctions regimes. Here is the thing most observers miss about this alliance. It exhibits high asymmetry and dependency between the two nations. Russia requires China primarily as a critical fallback for hardware imports and financial routing to survive Western sanctions. Without Chinese economic lifelines, the Russian war machine faces immediate logistical collapse. Conversely, China does not need Russia's economy or military strength. It needs Russia to serve as a geopolitical decoy that absorbs American pressure away from Beijing. This creates a fragile transactional state where neither party can afford the other's total collapse, yet both view each other with deep strategic caution rather than genuine trust. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. This relationship lacks what we might call a shared consensus algorithm on core strategic goals. Instead of operating like a single unified organism with synchronized objectives, they rely on a best effort delivery model for cooperation. This means their collaboration is strictly limited to immediate tactical needs and short-term survival requirements. When the pressure from Washington eases or when internal economic conditions shift, this partnership becomes inherently brittle under sustained stress because there is no deep ideological cohesion binding them together against all odds. The asymmetry in their relationship creates specific red lines that Western analysts often overlook. China carefully avoids becoming a junior partner in Russia's conflict by drawing strict boundaries on what support it can provide. Evidence suggests that despite the high-level rhetoric of eternal friendship, Beijing maintains distinct limits on providing lethal aid or direct military intervention. This caution indicates a partnership based more on mutual survival than shared ambition for global dominance. If China were truly part of an offensive bloc against the West, their actions would align with Moscow's maximalist goals rather than these calculated constraints. Consider how this dynamic plays out in practice regarding economic routing and technology transfer. Russia needs access to dual-use chips and industrial components that are otherwise blocked by Western export controls. China provides a channel for these goods through third-party intermediaries, effectively acting as an immune system bypassing the sanctions network. However, Beijing does not simply open its ports without compensation or strategic benefit. The transaction is calibrated so that Russia gains access to critical supplies, while China maintains plausible deniability and avoids secondary sanctions on its own financial institutions. This fragility challenges the narrative of a monolithic anti-US bloc emerging from Eurasia. Instead, we are witnessing a precarious balancing act where both leaders prioritize regime security over ideological unity. The risk for policymakers is assuming that because two nations speak with one voice today, they will remain aligned tomorrow when conditions change. If U.S. policy shifts or if internal economic pressures mount in either country, the foundation of this alliance could shift rapidly without warning signals to Western intelligence services. The lack of deep integration means their ability to act as a cohesive offensive unit is severely limited by latency and bandwidth constraints. Even though they can coordinate diplomatic statements quickly, actual operational coordination suffers from communication delays and differing risk tolerances. China's focus remains on economic stability and long-term technological dominance within Asia, while Russia focuses on territorial consolidation in Eastern Europe. These divergent priorities mean that any joint action is likely to be temporary and situational rather than part of a grand, coordinated strategy against the West. Western policymakers often misinterpret this friendship label as a monolithic threat vector because they project their own alliance structures onto Beijing-Moscow relations. They fail to account for the fact that China will not commit resources to Russia's war unless it directly benefits Chinese strategic interests. The relationship is not about shared victory in Ukraine, but about ensuring neither leader falls victim to American pressure tactics alone. This distinction changes how we should assess future risks and opportunities in global geopolitics. The real takeaway from this situation is that the best friendship narrative serves as a powerful domestic and international signal of defiance, yet it masks underlying tensions where China carefully avoids becoming Russia's junior partner. The alliance remains vulnerable to shifting geopolitical tides because it lacks the deep structural bonds found in traditional military pacts. Understanding these nuances allows us to move beyond simplistic threat assessments and recognize that this partnership is as much about mutual survival against external pressure as it is about any shared long-term vision for global order. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.